Hello everyone, hope you can hear me. Welcome to today's session as part of the Cambridge Live experience. This one's about using journals in the post-COVID-19 classroom. And I believe the last session was on Thai cookery, so I hope we haven't lost lots of people to the kitchen. I'm glad to see so many of you are still with us. My name's Angela Wright and I'm Global Product Manager Schools at Cambridge Assessment English. And leading today's session is Miranda Hamilton. Miranda is Exam Support Manager at Cambridge Assessment English. She has a background in teaching. She taught and was a teacher trainer for over 20 years. And she has a PhD from the University of Cambridge. Her research interest included learner autonomy, and today's session is very relevant to that topic as she's describing how journals can help learners develop autonomously. As you can see, like many of you, we're working at home, so bear with us if there's any technology problems. We're trying to give you the best experience possible. You may find it better audio if you use your headphones. We suggest you switch off anything such as Skype in particular, but any other programs you have open. And if your picture's blurry at first, don't worry, it should improve. Miranda, do you want to open up your session while I give the final instructions? So you're all using the chat box, so carry on using the chat box throughout. If you have any questions, please type them into the Q&A box. And we will try to answer them either as we go along or most of them at the end. It's quite a short session, so there might not be time for all of them. Okay,
can you see my slides?
I can't yet see your slides, no.
Oh, hang on, I must have.
Share your screen.
Hang on, let me escape.
While Miranda's just getting the slides together, you will get a certificate for this session at the end, and we'll send you a link to that and to the recording at the end. And it's come up now, Miranda, so just put it into slideshow view.
Are we all there?
And over to you. Yeah.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Well, welcome everybody. It's lovely to see so many of you with us in this session. It's an express session, so I'll crack straight on. It's about using journals and how we can use journals to create safe spaces for our learners to write in this post-COVID learning environment. So journals are a really useful tool that we can use to manage uncertainty as our learners go back to the classroom or back to learning in the post-COVID world. They're a really good tool because they create safe spaces for learners, whatever their level, from A2 to B2 and above, to reflect and explore ideas, to explore language, and importantly, to focus on fluency, writing for fluency. Now, dear diary or journals, journals can be written or they can be an audio or video diary. Now, while the focus today is on journal writing, you may find that for your learners, you might like to experiment with an audio or a video diary. So perhaps take ideas from today and experiment with your learners. Now, I want us to think about the challenges of writing, and I want us to think about the challenges of writing, and in particular to think about the needs of our teenage learners. Now, as our learners progress through the levels, whilst they have language knowledge, they can often feel tremendously frustrated. They know the language, but they can't express themselves. And they lack confidence and self-belief. And writing, as we all know, takes time and effort, especially in another language. Plus, how many times do we hear this? I don't know what to write. What can I say? Which means it's even more difficult to organise ideas, and they tend to focus an awful lot on accuracy rather than focusing on fluency. And it's really hard to get them out of that mindset. And of course, there is the fear of making a mistake. Learners want to get it right, and they don't like making mistakes. So there is a fear of error. But what's the value to the learner of exploring the use of diaries? Well, the more regularly learners write, the better they get. Writing is a skill, and the more they practice, the better they get. And so as they develop this habit of writing, it feels more normal, it feels more natural to them. And as they start to write, they get better at organizing their ideas before they write and as they put pen to paper. And the more they write, the better they get, the more confident they become, the more fluent they feel about writing. And of course, building a writing habit encourages writing for fluency so that they're not constantly focusing on getting it right. So the more they write, the more they read their language that they're writing, the more they become aware of their own mistakes, the errors that they tend to make. So it encourages noticing of errors for themselves without the teacher picking those errors up. Now let's take a look at some approaches to Dear Diary. Very traditionally, we write about my life. They write about their experiences. They write about their weekend, their holiday, their free time. Often, well, sometimes learners get creative about what happens in their real life, but quite often for a lot of learners, you may see this response. For them, the problem with this more traditional approach to writing, particularly for our teenage learners, is that they'll say, but my life is boring. I do the same things every day. I have nothing to write about. So we need to help them with this. So the approach I'm going to suggest, and an approach that I've tried very successfully with my learners in my classroom, is a scaffolded approach, giving learners support they need so that they can write and practice their writing. And the approach is like this. We need to give learners a reason to write, something to write about. So before class, research a Dear Diary topic. Identify a topic that is relevant to your learners, that is something that you know that your learners will have a view about, something that they will have something to say about. If they've got a view, they've got something to say, so they've got something to write. And this is really key to this scaffolded approach. But we don't go straight into writing. The next step is to identify topics that are going to be helpful. So the sorts of topics that would be helpful in terms of helping them make sense of their world, particularly at the moment as we go back to the classroom, go back to learning. Learners may have a lot to process after their experience of lockdown. So something like this might be useful. Look back, think about life in lockdown. How did your routine change? And to think about those changes. Which were positive for you? Which were more difficult for you? And which had the biggest impact on your life? Now, these are big, chunky topics. However, before you start to write, open the discussion up, because give learners the time to exchange ideas, but make it achievable. Frame it within a time framework of just 10 minutes. Write the topic on the board, open up the discussion into class, and elicit any useful vocabulary and language that comes out of that discussion. First of all, it will give you an idea about where your learners are. Secondly, it will make the learners feel that they're not alone, that other learners feel like they do. But most importantly, they won't start the writing stage without any ideas. They will have ideas to write about. So make it meaningful. Now, really important for Dear Diary is to make time and space for learners to write. Give them that quiet time. Now, You can either, depending on your timetable, depending on your situation at school, create a 10-minute writing. They write for just 10 minutes. Make it achievable, just 10 minutes. They can do it in the classroom or they can do it at home, but make it clear, just write for 10 minutes. Ask learners to think about their ideas, to think about the discussion from the classroom, and to write about those ideas that are most important to them in their journal. What matters to them? And ask them just to write, just to focus on their ideas and to focus on writing for fluency. All ideas are good ideas. All language is good language, but it is about writing for fluency. So if you can, build the writing habit into the day or into the week. Create space and time for learners to grow in self-belief and confidence that they can write, that they can explore and express important ideas in English, that they can organise their ideas, that they can focus on fluency and not have to always worry about getting it right. And importantly, writing is a skill. It improves with practice. So the more they write, the better they get. Now, this is an interesting one. And it's one that I had to think about because we want to create safe spaces for learners to write. We want to create a place that is theirs, that we don't necessarily look at. So there is this question of, do we mark or do we assess their journals? Now, this is an opportunity to explore notions of learner autonomy. And here you can give your learners the choice, and they'll welcome that choice. But there are a number of choices you can offer them. The first is no assessment. Nobody looks at it. It's their private space. They can write what they like, and it's theirs to read in private. You could offer them the choice of them looking, you assessing it, but you are invited to look at their journal. Don't expect that they will give it to you. It is their choice. Of course, you can give them the tools and encourage them to reflect on their writing and evaluate what they've written. And of course, there's an opportunity, if they wish, to exchange their diary with a classmate and they can peer assess their journals. But again, it is their choice, and partners may choose to exchange diaries, but you can't impose it upon them. Now, of course, if you are going to assess writing, you need to agree the success criteria. Now, you can agree that success criteria with your learners. You can ask them, you want me to look at your writing? What do you want me to look for? What would you like me to check for you? So you can agree with learners what the success criteria are. So it really is theirs to share with you and theirs to make decisions about how they exploit and explore writing a diary as a safe space to write. So that was a very quick session, but it really was trying to show you how you can use a journal to help you, to help your learners manage uncertainty in a post-COVID learning environment. So I hope that was helpful for you. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Miranda. We've only got a very short time for questions and I'll only pose a couple to you. But one was, a couple of people asked a similar question. Students start but don't continue. So they start a journal and they don't continue it. How can we encourage them to keep going?
Well, this is why I suggest the scaffolded approach. I think with a journal, it's a really good idea for the teacher to provide the topic. So you create the topic, you find something that is of interest to them, that you know they'll enjoy. You may do it once a week, you may do it every day, but you have a little discussion topic, and that is the stimulus that will get them to write. And then you create that space. It's journal time. It's time to write. You start to build that habit, but you drive it. You have to be the person who initiates the topic, that encourages them to think, that creates that space for them to write. If you're not there to create ideas to discuss and write about, they can't do it on their own. They need support.
Okay, great. And a couple of people in a similar vein asked, how do you feel about, especially at lower levels, learners might use a combination of English and their own language. What's your view on that?
Well, it's really interesting because I started using journals with my learners for my very, very lowest levels, for my A1, A2 learners. And essentially, I just allowed them to write because I wanted them to feel the pen on the page. I wanted them to feel the language and make that connection with the language on the page. So in the beginning, of course, just write. Write for fluency, write your ideas. And in fact, it is about creating safe spaces. So if they don't want to use English all the time, but they've got something they want to write about, encourage it. It's important for them, so therefore we have to respect that.
Okay, great. And then this one's quite an interesting one. Parents, what do parents complain that the teacher isn't checking their writing?
Well, I think if parents are complaining about that, then I think that's something that it's useful to share with parents in the newsletter, for example, to say that you're exploring the use of journals to support learners as they go back to learning, and that this is their space to explore how they feel about going back to learning after the pandemic, and to explain that. Often, I have to say, my learners always wanted me to read their journals. They may not have exchanged journals, but they generally wanted me to read them, and it gave us something to talk about if there were issues that came up. So often learners do want you to check.
Yes, and I think one of the questions was also, can writing a diary be therapeutic for children at this time? Do you have a view on that?
I think so. I mean, I think it's about making a quiet space. It's about making a space where learners can be expressive. It may be that they don't write, that they draw pictures, and that you write and they use key words that might illustrate how they feel. Maybe they choose a colour and colour in a picture that expresses how they feel that day. If they're sunshiny happy, choose yellow. If they're not so happy, maybe choose blue. So they could explore and experiment. So you can get quite creative with it.
Okay, yes. Yeah, some teachers are commenting on their own experiences of using journals, and children,
Yes.
you know, if they lack language, can use pictures as well,
Yes,
so both emotionally and for language.
I think so.
Yes. Sorry, I did see a question that I've lost now. What of competitive learners who might not be motivated because their writing's not marked?
They have a choice, because remember, in terms of setting notions of learner autonomy, I always have wanted to encourage learners to have a choice. If they would like the writing to be marked, it will be marked, but it's their choice. I'm giving them the agency to take ownership of their writing, and if they would like their writing marked, it will be marked. So it's
yes,
a choice.
There is a follow-up comment to that, which is, in some cultures, choice isn't encouraged.
In which case, you mark it.
In which case, you impose it. Right?
Yes, exactly,
Okay.
exactly.
And I think probably the last question we've got time for. Students in this era prefer playing games to writing. What can we do to encourage them to write?
Well, I think I'm not quite sure how. Well, there are some interesting apps that you can use. So I think there's an app called Storyboard It. So you can go in and create a storyboard, building in pictures to reflect what you're feeling. So you could, I haven't got the link to that now, but you could experiment with different apps that would create a scaffold to kickstart a story that they could experiment with and write a journal through.
Yes, nice idea. Okay, I think that's all we've got time for. So thank you very much for Miranda for your talk. And I think it's helped inspire teachers to go off and try this. And there's been lots of great suggestions from other teachers in the chat box. So hopefully you've also learned from each other. So
yes,
thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.